Alright? Just thinking about Spartacus. Spartacus. You know the original film with Kirk Douglas, Tony Curtis? Spartacus. Well, that story, that whole story is fucking incredible, man. And it's what, as a revolutionary socialist, it's what I aspire to, really. You know, obviously the modern equivalent, the working class fighting back against the ruling class. Like in Spartacus's day, it was the slaves rising up against the Romans, the Roman Empire. But, you know, the odds were stacked against them, but they still fought back. And that's the point, isn't it? Even though the odds are stacked against you, you do what you can, man. You unite. You unite your forces and build as much strength as you can against the common enemy. And you fight. You don't just bow down. You don't just roll over and die. You fight back. And of course, the great scene in Spartacus is near the end, isn't it? When they've all been captured. The slave army under Spartacus's leadership has been defeated, and they're all rounded up, and they're all sitting in a field, and the fucking leader of the Romans, he wants Spartacus executed. So he says, you know, he calls for them to give Spartacus up. And Spartacus being a proper leader, a collective leader, and not a wanker like the Roman guy, he stood up first. I'm fucking Spartacus. What about it, like? Fucking bring it on. I'm Spartacus. I'm not gonna let all these people suffer because of my leadership. No. I'll stand forward and I'll take it. I'll take the punishment. Bring it on, Roman shitheads. But of course, his people were so inspired by Spartacus. His soldiers, his slave army was so inspired by his leadership. And the fact that he wasn't an arsehole, and he did the graft, and he did the fighting himself. He didn't send them in while he did fuck all. He was in amongst them, man. He was part of them. He was part of the collective. They were all equals. Equals. Nobody was greater than anyone else. No one had more value than anyone else. So when Spartacus stood up and said, I'm Spartacus, one by one, well, initially one by one, but then in huge numbers, they all stood up. And they all said the same thing. I'm Spartacus. I'm fucking Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Great, man. That's what socialism's about. You know, we don't let one person suffer. We all take it. We don't let one person fight back. We all fight. Because together we are stronger. And even in defeat, we don't let the bastards win completely. We do what we can right to the death to prove them wrong. Because even in death, Spartacus and his slaves, his slave army, slaves to the Romans, obviously, not to Spartacus. They were the slaves fighting back against slavery. But Spartacus and his slave soldiers, they left a legacy. They left a story to be told down the ages. They did something that Romans would never do. You know, the British Army would never do, because they're not slaves. They haven't been conditioned in that way, they haven't had the experiences to make them feel like equals. They've been led by arseholes, hierarchy, rich officers who use these people as cannon fodder. They're not inspired by great leadership like Spartacus and his leadership. They're not inspired in that way. So they don't feel that way and they don't act that way. But Spartacus's army was different, man. Different. An early socialist army, if you like. And in a similar way, the Red Army in Russia, after the Russian Revolution, was like a Spartacus army. You know, Trotsky was the first leader in modern history to do away with ranks. So there were no ranks in his army. And the Red Army of Russia, of the revolutionary Russia, functioned in a different way and were stronger as a result, inspired by Spartacus and his slave army. And that's what revolutionary armies, or socialist revolutionary armies, are all about. They're all about equality, seeing yourselves as equals. Even the leaders are equals. And there's no such thing as inequality. There's no such thing as some doing the fighting and not others. They all muck in together, and they all reap the rewards together, because it's all about sharing, man. Sharing. Socialism, Spartacus, it's just human sharing. That's all it is. And what's wrong with that, eh? Why shouldn't everything be shared? Why not? Doesn't that make more sense than a few people having everything and most people having nothing? Or most people doing all the graft and a few people doing nothing and having all the wealth? Doesn't it make more sense to share the load and share the rewards? If you don't believe that, what's up with you, man? I'll tell you what's up with you. You've been conditioned by capitalism to see things the other way, to see things in the interests of your rich rulers, your rich oppressors. And you need to get over that, man. Think more like Spartacus. Think more like Trotsky. Think like a socialist. I do. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Anyway, see you in the next one.